WBNY Buffalo.
91.3 FM WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative. Brought to you by the Student Activity Fee here at Buffalo State College. This is All Talk Monday, WBNY's public affairs programming that airs Monday mornings till midnight. The views expressed in all the various All Talk Monday shows are not necessarily those of WBNY, the United Students Government at Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about All Talk Monday, you can direct them to WBNY's All Talk Monday, 1300 Elmwood Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14222. For more information, check out our website at wbny.buffalostate.edu. Or you may give us a call at the station at 716-878-5104 and take part in all the various All Talk Monday shows.
Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded here at and broadcast here at WBNY 91.3 FM, Buffalo's original alternative radio station coming out of Buff State. So we're very grateful to Buff State, and I also want to give a little nod to our friends at Think Twice Radio that also produce this show at times as well. When I think of appreciation, I think of our Indigenous friends and people of color generally, and I can say that for our Indigenous friends, we certainly, I want to recognize and state that we are on stolen Haudenosaunee land, Seneca Onondaga land that was taken through trickery and violence, and in spite of all the hardships and really close to genocide that Indigenous people in this country faced. They are still filled with gratitude. They start all of their events with a ganonyo, which is just an appreciation for Mother Earth, for all the people that made the event happen, that are there and making it happen, for Mother Earth that gives us everything we need for a good life here on Earth, for all the living waters, Mini Wachoni, water is life, and for all the wonderful animals, plants of all kinds, the trees, all the heavenly bodies, the really sky world, as they call it, and then the creator and the love that animates it all. And so then the people say, Nyahweh, the person says Nyahweh, and then the people say Nyo. So Nyahweh.
Nyahweh.
You can say Nyo.
No.
Thank you. So, we have a very important topic, and I think this threads through so many of our topics, and that is human rights. And it's human rights, and, especially in relation to the Western New York Peace Center annual dinner, which I'll say right up front, this is the last day for buying tickets. I'm broadcasting live, so if you go to the website, WNYPC.org, there's a link to our Give Butter site where you could buy tickets. But we are talking about human rights, and we'll get into it, at home, abroad, and we have two great experts on the topic. And so I would just say, I've got Derek Seidman is right here. Thank you, Derek, for coming. Derek, is, as a journalist, you've done so much work on human rights, really, and then also as a member of Jewish Voice for Peace, one of the steering committee members. So welcome, Derek.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. And then last but by far not least, we're so excited that Julia Hall, who is an attorney and a human rights expert who's worked in the field so diligently and in such really high-profile work for both Amnesty International and before that Human Rights Watch, and also a professor and just doing all kinds of wonderful work, as well as getting out in the street. I'm always happy to see you and always happy to learn from you. Julia Hall, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be
Yeah, so it's very good to be with you here. You can get that mic a little closer. That might help a little. So anyway, because we really need to hear what you're going to say. And there's so much to talk about here. Human rights just really affects all of so many other issues are really about human rights when you boil them down. But anyway, before we get into some more detail, I'd just like us to go around, as we often do, to just say what values, when you think of human rights, what are the values that you think of? And so we'll start with you, Derek. What would you say when you think of human rights? What kind of values do you think we need to bear in mind?
I think there's many values I think of, but one that immediately comes to mind is dignity. I think that there are so many forces in this world that try to strip people's inherent dignity from them, try to degrade them, to humiliate them, and take their rights away from them, dehumanize them. I think that's what we've been seeing happening in Palestine, and it's happening elsewhere in the world right now. It's happening in the United States as well. To immigrants right now, for example. And I think, one of the values that drives me is to, defend that dignity, defend people's dignity. And I think that's something that's coming to mind right now.
Well, thank you. That is such a big one, and it affects so much. And it even though it's abstract in some ways, it is so at the core. I really appreciate you bringing it up, and I've seen the way you can be so moving, in your written or speaking about those things. So I appreciate your standing up for people's dignity and values in that way. Now, Greg, I didn't introduce you. I know you're the engineer here, but in the spirit of a talking circle, I just want to ask you: do you want to contribute a value?
Well, normally I would. I was paying attention to something else.
I'm sorry. Well, you are producing the show, and you do have a lot going on.
Right.
But I didn't mean to
put me on the spot.
Put you on. Yeah, exactly.
No worries. Yes.
What I did. But
I'm going to have to pass on this one, but give me a chance to get my brain back around to what we're talking about.
Okay, we can come back to you. It's
yes,
just
please circle back around.
Just the values that you think of when we're talking about human rights.
Right. Absolutely.
What kind of values. And Julia, I know as somebody who's worked so hard on that area, it's just so deep. But just a couple of points of values that you think of.
Right. Well, just taking off on Derek's point, which is, for me, like the crux.
Right.
Human dignity.
Mm-hmm.
From a field worker's, human rights field worker's point of view, and from a lawyer's point of view, the question then becomes how you defend human dignity.
Right.
And that has always been a process issue for those of us who work in the field or do litigation on behalf of people's human rights. Is we do it in order to defend human dignity. And I'm very much interested in the weeds and the ways that we do that, whether it's through litigation, whether it's through protest, whether it's through advocacy. I know that Derek and JVP have done some really fine advocacy with local political actors on the issue of the genocide in Palestine. So for me, very much, I base my own practice in the notion that we have to defend human dignity and the ways that we should be doing that.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Yes, we do. We need to defend human dignity and, of course, defend our democracy, too, and defending the rule of law worldwide, which has, never been respected, certainly not by the United States either. But anyway, in so many examples of where it hasn't been. Greg, have you thought of something you want to add?
No, because I was paying attention to what's going on with your microphone.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah, it's not behaving as correctly as we would like, so you're definitely going to have to get a lot closer than I originally had said to you.
There might be something that's not quite connecting as well, so you need to...
Really give us a good punch. So,
all right, I can be loud.
Right.
Excellent.
I
think that's what we need on that.
That's very, very natural for me.
That's
good. That will
I'll
help.
just be louder as well.
I'll go behind the curtain here, show you behind the curtain and say that we have all these microphones adjusted for the very loud sports-oriented students here.
Oh, right. Okay.
Softer voices don't have enough oomph oftentimes. So, yes, be as loud as you need to be, and the processing will take care of it. So.
Right. Well, that will help.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, dignity, right? Human rights and dignity?
And human rights, really. Yeah, just what do you think of? Just anything that it makes you think of. just a free association of dignity.
Well, definitely, just
human rights.
For lack of better description, just be kind to everybody. And there's so many natural resources available to all of us, and just share and share alike. Be good to your neighbors, and boy, everybody will be happier for that, I would think.
Right.
And
No,
I can't always understand why people get fall into the greed trap, and it's like more. I need more. Why? You
right.
Think back to that movie Wall Street. How many boats do you need to ski behind?
Right.
One will work. So
right, exactly. Yeah. So you're so right. So just being kind to people will help us with our human rights struggle. Really.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if the people who were making the decisions were being even a little bit kind, all those decisions wouldn't be being made. What to speak of just some of the heinous outrage in the ways that people's human rights are being trampled and people's lives are being taken. I mean, people are suffering so much. So when I think of human rights, I think of, there's some very basic things. I think of the UN Convention on Human Rights. What's it called? The
Universal Declaration. On Human Rights.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the UN, which goes into a lot of very physical things that people should have, like water is a human right. Things that, actually, that's why I love that we start off with the Gnoño, because so many of those things that nature gives us, that the world provides for us, but then here we are, chopping it up and controlling and, keeping it away from people who need it. And, and people who don't need it just have more than what they need. So I think really compassion as, that the basic human needs, but then those other, as you said, the dignity and the love that we need to have for each other. When we think of human rights, I think of the fact that if I cut off my thumb, it doesn't just hurt my thumb. It's the whole of me. Even, of course, the whole rest of the hand, but the whole rest of the person. You're not doing anything else while that's going on. So when we think we're not connected, but we are connected so deeply, and when people are not given their human rights, we're all going to suffer. We all do suffer, and that's, I guess that's really what we want to get to next, is to talk about the ways that human rights are or not being respected, both nationally and internationally. So, if you want to first go at that, Derek, what would you say? Some of the situation right now, the things that really strike you, not nationally and internationally, about human rights.
Well, you mentioned that a lot of what we talk about with human rights is dependent on people getting sort of very basic, concrete, material things, and I think that there's very powerful forces that are standing in the way of people getting things that they need to have basic dignity. For example, right now in the United States, we're seeing Wall Street firms make a move towards gobbling up electric utilities. Utility rates are rising. We're seeing private equity firms building up massive housing portfolios. And we could go on and on. So we're seeing corporations and firms that are laser focused on making profit and extracting as much capital as they can from their investments, treating the basic things that everybody needs as part of their portfolio. And I think that's a big barrier, because things like being able to heat your home, having a home, food, all of these things, right? These are human rights,
right?
Healthcare, and I think internationally, outside of the U.S., clearly we're seeing grave violations of human rights, from Palestine to Sudan,
right? Right. Oh, you're so right. So in all those ways, and thank you for bringing up, there is this way, this kind of indirect thing that we don't really see, but what the result is, people do not have what they need, and then other people have way more than what they need, and it's still never enough. So that is just, I mean, we have the worst income and asset distribution in the world, in the developed world, or the more developed world, I should say, or the more, well, let's say the Western world, and still it's people who have the 1%, still not enough. Julia, what would you say?
Well, again, just taking off on Derek's points, I think one of the issues for me is we hear often that there's a crisis in human rights.
Right.
We're at some kind of a critical point where either they're relevant or they're completely irrelevant. I would say that the crisis really is a crisis of governance and political will.
Right.
And to kind of stop saying there's a crisis in human rights, we have a political class that is so deeply entrenched and so committed not to human rights, not to human dignity, not to your rights at all. They're really committed to accumulating, consolidating power. Right. And I think until we start understanding the nature of power in an entirely different way, this is where we're going to be for a while. And I think about this because I think about structural systems of oppression. Right? It's not a one-off that there is a genocide in Sudan, or a one-off that there's a genocide in Palestine. It's not a one-off that women are systematically abused around the world. These are structural systems of oppression that are created and maintained and sustained by a very powerful political class of people who also have a lot of money, right? And so one of my biggest criticisms of the international human rights movement, having been in it for 30 years, was a total absence of a critique of capitalism itself, right? Never commenting. None of the major human rights instruments comment on it. None of the major human rights organizations, two of which I hold very dear, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, have deliberately avoided a critique of capital and capitalism. And that is where so much of this power and all of those structures of oppression live. And so I think that once we kind of open our minds up to this much bigger, and I realize it's a huge problem, but we have to start critiquing those structural systems of oppression. And for me, that very much starts with capitalism. And its cousins, racism, misogyny, the genocide of indigenous people in this country and around the world. And I realize that when I say that, I open up it feels like a huge field. But we can see with what's happening in the United States, what's happening in Hungary, et cetera, with the corruption and the fact that it's money and power that fuel everything that's happening right now. We need to start thinking about how to disrupt that in peaceful ways, using the law, using our voices, using advocacy in the corridors of power. And so that is, I guess that would be my contribution right now.
Well, that is a wonderful contribution. And I believe that that Craig McIver is on the phone. So, Craig, welcome. So Craig McIver is going to be on our panel at the Western New York Peace Center annual dinner. Craig, are you there?
I am here.
Hi. So I just want to introduce you. I just want to say, for those. Now, first of all, we're just grateful that you've squeezed in some time for us today. And we're very, very grateful that you're going to be at the Western New York Peace Center annual dinner on this coming Monday, the 10th. But thanks for calling in. But you are a friend of the show. So some people, and also, nationally and internationally known. But just for those who don't know, I want to tell people that you were a senior official at the UN, the senior human rights official at the UN, and quit over the way the UN has failed Palestine. So welcome, Craig.
Good to be with you, Victory. Nice to hear everybody.
We're so grateful. We're so grateful to have you. Well. First of all, you did get the Stellar Media Award from the Western New York Peace Center last year, but I'm sure you've gotten all kinds of awards, but not nearly as many as you deserve for just your eloquence in talking about human rights. And that's our topic of today is human rights. And we were just going around with Derek, of course, Derek Seidman, who you know, and Julia Hall, who you also know, about the state of human rights in, nationally and internationally. So is there, if you just want to give us like a brief overview of your view of where those things stand right now.
Well, I'm sure there's very little I can add to what people in Julia and Derek have said and will say. But, I'm always reminded these days of a quote from Aimé Césaire, who essentially described how, fascism is basically colonialism when it's applied at home. And we've been watching over the course of the last couple of years that every presumed moral and legal red line that has been set by the international community over the course of, since 1945, since the end of the Second World War, has been crossed and obliterated one right after another. And, the warning that if genocide is not a red line, there are no red lines is something that is ringing true these days. And Aimé Césaire's warning that when colonialism is brought home, it manifests as fascism at home is something that we are witnessing here in the United States. It is uncanny to see heavily armed, masked men who are attacking people in our cities, dragging them away from their homes and their jobs and their schools and the hospitals in which they're seeking aid, to see how every presumption of human rights from the First Amendment of the Constitution on down, free expression, is being stripped away from American citizens in the name of an oppressive foreign regime. Here we're talking about, the complicity between the U.S. government and the Israeli regime, silencing people in the United States from speaking out against genocide, against apartheid, against foreign occupation, racist regimes. And so this is very much, the sins that our governments have perpetrated abroad being brought home. Of course, it's nothing new. This is a country that was founded on human rights atrocities. It was founded on the genocide of the indigenous people. It was founded on the enslavement of Africans. And of course, has long been framed as an imperial power that has brought these crimes to the shores of countries from Africa to Asia to the Middle East to Latin America and beyond. But the mask has been very much ripped away, and we have entered an era where there is no pretense of respect for notions like human rights or the rule of law. We have a government in the United States working in concert with oppressive regimes in Tel Aviv, in Europe, in Asia, and elsewhere, that is violating the human rights of people abroad and committing similar violations against people right here in the United States, beginning with our migrant sisters and brothers, but also other communities living here in the United States. So it's a dangerous moment that the pretense of human rights has been stripped away, that all red lines have been crossed and obliterated, and that we now have among us neighbors who are cheering for the perpetration of these crimes at home and abroad. These are the alarms of fascism. These are the things that should mobilize us. But I just let me finish this thought with one other thing, Vicki, which is we've seen something else over the course of the last couple of years of the genocide in Palestine and the erosion of human rights here in the United States, and that is a mobilization of people against these atrocities like we have not witnessed for many decades, if forever. And that's the light. That's where the hope is. And it has always been the case that human rights and the rule of law are not guaranteed by the government. They're not guaranteed by any government. They're guaranteed by the people. And we have to build those mobilizations and those movements, and we have to begin to push back in ways that are as unprecedented as the threats that we are facing. So this, I think, is in a nutshell the way I'm seeing the human rights situation right now.
Wow. Well, you're only just explaining why you got the Stellar Media Award. No, just your analysis and your insights are so important. And actually, Julia had just been talking about capitalism. And, I was just thinking about fascism and how fascism, that definition where it said that fascism is when corporations are running the government, big business is running the government, which is certainly what we have now, just a level of corruption. So actually the topic of the dinner is defending our democracy, demanding our rights. So that's right up with what you're saying. And thank you for that ray of hope, too, about the mobilizations that we see happening. And I think we've all been out there. We've all been organizing or speaking. And it's, it's building community and building our ability to mass mobilize the way we'll need to. And I do believe that we will need to, but it's happening. So, Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted, for listeners especially, to, while mass mobilization is crucial, and it probably will be the key in terms of these kinds of disruptions, I think we also have to understand how the U.S. government and how governments all over the world actually suppress mass mobilization. And in this country, we have a recent national security presidential memo that targets people for allegedly being anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Christianity, and actually directs law enforcement agencies of the federal government to investigate people for the way they think. And it's usually the way you think that goes down to your feet and brings you out on the streets. And so at the same time that we want to uphold the principle of protest and peaceful assembly and mass mobilization, I think we have to be very smart about it.
Sure.
Because I don't think that there's any doubt at this point that the U.S. government, among many other governments, have plans to suppress, and to suppress in a way that potentially could be not just violate your rights to peaceful protest and to freedom of expression, but to do it in a violent manner. And so I want people to be on the streets, and I want them to be on the streets in mass numbers, and I also want them to be safe. And so I think that really well-curated protest mobilization with safeguards for people and legal observers and all of the things, it's like a ballet when you plan a protest. We really need to be together as in community over curating protests in a way that keep people safe and also let their voices be heard.
So, yes, that's very important. And also, getting out in the street is not the only way of being active on these issues. First of all, just talking with your family and friends, amplifying the issues and the truth. And actually, I really felt it that when we went around with values, I didn't say truth and love, but they're at the foundation of everything we're talking about. So the truth of what's going on, which is not being presented in many cases. There's rampant lies going on and disinformation, purposeful disinformation, and the playbook, that Goebbels playbook is alive and well in this country. So I think people have to take a lot of first of all, we're very careful when we are planning events. So we have peacekeepers, and right now it hasn't gotten that difficult for. Although there's been suppression here, of course there is. And Craig, it. We were there when UB wouldn't let the showing of In the Camps go forward. So I was, honored to be able to be there, to be able to go, and that people stood up there for that right to show it, even though they didn't get to show it. And of course, we did get to show it, just in another venue.
Yeah, there's no question that the kind of repression that Julia is talking to is already appearing here in Western New York. The efforts to silence people to intimidate people. This is an area in which immigration and customs enforcement is extremely active. We see the helicopters all across the Niagara River every single day. So we are not immune from the kind of repression that Julia is talking about, and those sorts of things have already begun here. But I think it is I think Julia's absolutely correct warnings are not a reason for us to hesitate or to be fearful. Just as she has said, an admonition that we have to be smart in the way we do it, and that also means building the movement, because if we turn out in enough numbers and have a sustained movement with enough numbers, it becomes more and more difficult for that oppression to reach the levels. They can't arrest. They can arrest hundreds. They can't arrest tens of thousands of people who are in the streets for a particular mobilization. And it also means reaching out more broadly than maybe we are used to. We have to remember that there's always a sunrise, and this regime in Washington is not going to be in control forever of this country, although I have no doubt that they intend to try to stay beyond Trump's 4 years. There's no question in my mind, and they may succeed. And I have no question in my mind that the party that is supposed to be the opposition party, the Democrats, are not much better and not very good at challenging the abuses that are coming out of the Trump regime. But they will not be in power forever. And I think it's very important to remind our neighbors who are in law enforcement, who are in immigration enforcement, who are in the military or the National Guard, that they too can be held accountable for the abuses of law that they are sometimes ordered to perpetrate. And that they have a responsibility under both national and international law to refuse unlawful orders from above. Since Nuremberg, the excuse that you were only following superior orders has ceased to be a defense. It's not a defense of U.S. law. It's not a defense of international law. And you can be held accountable for following unlawful orders that violate the rights of people right here in Western New York, and that the day is going to come when those who have perpetrated these crimes will be, in one way or another, held accountable. And it's important that they protect themselves from complicity in these kinds of abuses.
Right, you're so right. And actually, I'm glad as we're getting more talking more about what's happening here with ICE, et cetera. And we do have rapid response people, and they will be at the annual dinner, by the way. I'm very thrilled to mention. And Derek is going to be, Derek Seidman, we're so glad that you're going to be reporting on your reporting about ICE and what's been going on locally and nationally with ICE at the Latin American Solidarity Committee meeting for it's a coffee house on let's say November 24th. Oh, thank you. So we're glad you'll be doing that. Do you have something you want to say? I know we've just gotten a lot. So what's your thoughts on all that?
Sure. Yeah. I think that in many ways we're obviously living in dark times.
Right.
And there are many things to be fearful of and worried about. But I also want to emphasize Craig's point about that there's a light.
Yes.
And one of the things that I feel inspired by every day, whether it's through my own organizing or through the reporting I do, is that I'm constantly talking to organizations, to people that are engaged in all types of organizing work and are building broad movements, whether that's the hundreds of different tenant unions that have sprung up all over the country that are taking on their landlords directly, whether it's organizers that are fighting for public power and publicly owned utilities and energy systems, whether it's the many different types of immigrant rights work, thousands of immigrant rights activists all across the country that are developing all different types of strategies and tactics, usually, legal tactics, direct action tactics defending immigrants from ICE block by block. The unbelievable courage of thousands of students who were defending Palestine in its darkest hour and risking a lot to do that. And we could go on and on. Mm-hmm. There is so much sort of subterranean movement building that's happening right now. And I don't think that the far right has real solutions to the basic crises that people are facing and that are driving this period, this historical period of transition that we're living through right now. And even if things look bad, things can change very quickly.
Right.
And so the future is to be determined, I think.
Well, thanks, Derek. Yes, that's all very true. And thank you, each of you. You know, there's so much that's been offered just now, and I want to say it's so important that hope is the responsibility of the activists, or really of all of us. I mean, just getting up in the morning, we have to have a belief that our day is going to be a meaningful day, and that we're going to put joy and beauty in our day every day, and we're going to keep persisting for each other, building community, working together. Everyone around this table right now, and you and so many out there listening who are struggling and working to make things better in our own ways. So especially organizing is an important thing, but communicating in any kind of way, learning, sharing, growing community, all of those things that are so important. And actually, a lot of those things will be happening directly at the Western New York Peace Center annual dinner. We're so excited that we're going to have a panel. So, Craig, with you, Dr. Shannon Seneca, who's an Indigenous woman and so knowledgeable about, she's a scientist and just another activist. Franchelle Parker, who's the director at Open Buffalo. We're so glad that she will be joining us and you. And then last but not least, Dr. Shyam Sriram, who's been so active about immigration and refugee resettlement, et cetera. So those, and then all the people there, the people who are coming out to support the Peace Center, because I want to say, there are so many groups that have a part to play, and certainly Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch have been wonderful. JVP has been outstanding, both locally and nationally and all over the place. But anyway, and the truth tellers that we need and that we love. So I just want to say, Craig, all the work that you do is so. You just finished with the Gaza Tribunal. That was wonderful. For anyone who hasn't heard parts of that, they should just go it and hear Craig's testimony, or some of the other previous shows. But come to the dinner and hear them then. So anyway, I don't want to embarrass you more. So I think I promised it would be a very short time and let you get on to your other things you have to do. But Craig, anything more you want to say?
Well, listen, it's really my pleasure, Victor. This will be the second year that I have the pleasure to attend the annual dinner of the Western New York Peace Center and to hear to all of those inspiring speakers and to be in a community that really gives me courage, because anyone who walks in those doors will suddenly see that this really is what movement building is about. When you go into the Western New York Peace Center, you will see inspiring people from, who are doing incredible work from the African American community, from the indigenous communities of the Seneca and the Tuscarora, from the peace movement, from the human rights movement, community organizers, all coming together under one roof to really just share in community, but it's an opportunity to build strategy and connections and so on. So I think it's an extremely important space in Western New York. And I'll just say one other thing, why I think these sort of connections are so important, right? We are also up against a propaganda machine that is unprecedented in its power and in its scope and in its reach in the history of the world. The collaboration of Western media corporations, the collaboration of social media companies, all with oppressive governments and their policies, lining up one by one, not just to work with Trump and his cronies, but to stand as the oligarchs behind him in the efforts to strip us of our rights in this country and more broadly. That is a real threat to the rights and freedoms and any democratic hopes of anyone in this country and abroad. And what Derek said is so inspiring, because despite that massive propaganda machine, more and more people in this country, beginning with the students and then spreading out across, from shore to shore, have become enlightened and have realized what the truth is, despite this massive, unprecedented wall of propaganda that has been constructed in this country. And that's what we need to build. It's through education, person to person, movement to movement, community to community, from labor unions to peace activists to the various communities that make up the greater community here. That's where the information can flow. That's where we can tear cracks in the wall of propaganda that threaten the rights and freedoms of all of us. And so this is really very, very important. We're seeing the consolidation now with the purchase, the billionaire and corporate and Israel lobby purchase of networks in the United States and of social media companies in the United States. And these are going to be very dangerous tools in the master's toolbox that are going to threaten us all. And our defense of that, our shield against that, and our sword against that is person to person, movement to movement, community to community. And that's why things like the Western New York Peace Center, I think, are so important.
Craig, thanks so very, very much. We're really very excited to see you in a week, and we'll let you go. But thank you so much. And you're certainly doing, every just a real, stellar media person. So you're so right, and we'll just keep trying to do that. So thank you, and we'll see you in a week. Thanks
Thank you.
So
Looking
much.
forward to it, and nice to hear from Julia and Derek as well.
Take care. Bye for now.
Vicki, I'd like to just kind of tip my hat to the students.
Sure, please.
We're on a college campus.
Right.
I just got off a great visiting professorship at the University of Chicago.
Right.
I also took a bunch of students along with the ACLU's Human Rights Project to Geneva last year.
Wonderful.
To do advocacy in Geneva with all of the human rights mechanisms. And I have to tell you, the students absolutely blew me away. I was so impressed by the fact that they were able to see through the propaganda. They were able to see where the actual problems lay. They were articulate. They were on time. They were funny. They were so bright. And for me right now, when I think about mass mobilization and I think about the hope for the future, because I obviously totally agree with Derek and Craig, I really see it in the students.
Right.
And because I've experienced it firsthand, how committed they are, how smart they are, how not willing to take the garbage that is thrown at them on a daily basis, and how they're able to wade through it. And just a little tip of a hat to my own two. I have a 23-year-old and a 25-year-old who are consistently right about all of this. And it gives me such pleasure and hope to see the students mobilizing in this manner, to see the students who are mobilizing for Mamdani. Many of them can't even vote.
Right.
And there were radio interviews this morning with some of them. So I would really like to say that I'm finding young people to be my hope at this point, which does not throw any shade on anybody else. It is just to say that the pride I'm taking in seeing young people step up to the plate right now, it's huge.
Absolutely. Well, and first of all, of course, we need all of us. We need all of us in whatever way that's going to work for people. But I do want to say, for students, I mean, the students have always been such a key element in any real forward motion, and usually, oftentimes, starting with young people who start pushing the envelope. Although there's certainly plenty of people who've been doing it right along as well. But we need young people, and we have young people. And I just want to mention, we'll do a radio show on this soon, but Peace Action New York State has a program where student organizers get paid to be student organizers on campus. So we can talk some more about that. I have mentioned it to people and certainly mentioned it on the show before, but I think we'll do a whole show on that to really encourage people to get started for next semester. But meanwhile, you can look at Peace Action New York State and see their program for student organizing. And people are welcome to become a student organizer. You'd be just making a few phone calls, have a couple of events, and then you could get paid a certain amount over the semester for that work. And also, now, Derek, are you still teaching too? You have done. You're at. I
used to teach at Duville, but that was a while ago.
Oh, okay.
I do teach labor studies courses through Rutgers online.
And where are you? I'm sorry. Where?
I teach labor studies courses at Rutgers online.
Oh,
I've been doing
Rutgers,
that since the height of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm, right, at Rutgers. Well, that's very good. So there's back to that. It's so important, to give people an opportunity to really learn. And the other thing I really love that what Craig said about it's going to be a person-to-person thing in the end, because when you think social media is so diabolical, and on the one hand, it's terrible. It's so insidious. It's spying on us, getting all our information, slurping it up, manipulating us, and really driving wedges between people. However, it's a great organizing tool. So we have not been, willing to forego it yet, and yet it's still under the control of the oligarchs. And so for the social media and all of our communications, they're at the whim of the oligarchs. We know that. So those things can be changed or manipulated, spied on, all of that completely, so that in the end, if they want to shut that down, they could shut it right down. So we're going to need to be able to communicate and find our own ways to communicate with each other. So I think that person-to-person there's no substitute for person-to-person communication. So let us go around. I want to say, everything that we've been talking about, certainly about Palestine and the Sudan. There's so much that's going on in terms of people's human rights, and I also wanted to say, in terms of immigration, the fact that people are emigrating usually because their life is not livable where they're living. So because of the foreign policies of the U.S. that have made the economics just not work in these countries, where it's cash crops that are, people are underpaid and they just can't make a living at home. So that's why people move. People don't, it's not that people love to leave their home and all their friends and family. I mean, so I think we need to realize that, and so many people are now settled here. So I think we want to, let's just do another go round on exactly some of the ways that you see people working for human rights here locally, and ways that people can get more involved. Well,
there's so many examples that are inspiring to me. One group that's really inspiring to me is Justice for Migrant Families.
Yes.
It's an amazing organization that's been working for years to defend immigrants in Western New York. And the operation that they've been able to build hand in hand with the immigrant community and refugee community here in Western New York with few resources has been really, really impressive. And, it's also been amazing to see, I know there was Palestine solidarity work happening in Western New York before the genocide in Gaza, but it's been inspiring to see a community really come together across the region.
Yes.
Of all different types of organizations, people, labor activists to faith activists to, just so many different people, and coming out for events and working together. It feels like a new and expanded community is something that came out of this that we can use to build upon for the future. And it also feels like we've built a new sort of political pole within Western New York that makes solidarity with Palestine and being able to be critical of the Israeli regime something that is. There's a lot more political space for that in the region now.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Those are very good examples. And I have to just say, I'm a volunteer with Justice for Migrant Families, but I'll do more. So I've been on there's all kinds of ways of volunteering for them. You know, the phone line is one of the ways I've done the phone line for Batavia and been out to Batavia actually. But you know, there's everything from accompanying people to donating books or helping with the book. They have commissary that they help people get. There's all kinds of ways. Legal accompaniment, which is another team that I'm working on. But I'll have a little more time when the annual dinner is over. But anyway, so thank you for mentioning both of those. And certainly we've been shoulder to shoulder. I'm actually wearing a JVP shirt that says "Stop Arming Israel." I wish people could see, plus with the keffiyeh. But the JVP is really a great organization as well, and so it's been very courageous and persistent here and everywhere. And Julia, what would you add for ways that people have?
Well, as you know, Vicki, I am new to Buffalo in a lot of ways because I've worked outside of Buffalo for the past 30 years.
And it's such a high level. I just want to say, you know, you really worked at very high level in both of those organizations.
But what I've been very impressed with in the short time that I've kind of dipped my toe into local activism, and I'm very happy to be here, I see the same kind of hope for a much more progressive politics. I've been very disturbed by any number of commentators from Ezra Klein down talking about how we have to move closer to the center.
Oh,
and it is deeply distressing to me that at exactly a moment when we're building a movement like the one that Derek just talked about and that Craig before talked about, that we have people who are influencing the only opposition party that we really have at the moment to be less progressive. And so I would say that we have to keep on fueling forward and taking those centrists to task. We don't want to go back to the good old bad days. Let's remember that people who did human rights and civil liberties work were fighting that fight before Trump.
Right?
Oh, before
absolutely.
Trump won. Before Trump, you know, in the interregnum between Trump 1 and Trump 2. So it's not a situation where as long as they go away, everything's going to be fine. And so my goal in all of the activism and the advocacy and the litigation that I'm engaged in, and also being on the ground for people who need me and my husband, whether it's families who are in the asylum process or whatever, is to see a progressive political movement continue after this dark moment.
Can I say one thing about that?
Sure, please.
Just putting on a historian's cap for a second, I just want to echo that so much. I think it's important to remember when the centrists of their day wouldn't confront head-on the reality of slavery in the United States. It was the abolitionists who showed the way. When during the crisis of the Great Depression, the United States was in an impasse, it was labor militants and the left that struck and sat down and showed the way. When the nation was unable to deal with the colonialism in the South of Jim Crow, it was, you know, young civil rights activists and groups like SNCC that put their bodies on the line and showed the way. And it was students in the left and the student movement that offered the critique of the Vietnam War and action around the Vietnam War that really was, you know, the most forward reach. So we could go on, but it's really in moments of crises like this, it's often the case that the centrists don't have solutions. They're stuck. And it's the left that really is able to push through and show a way and really save democracy.
Well, and from your lips to God's ears, So, I mean, we need to do all of that. It's so important. And we can do all of that. I want to say, I love this, I think that the Chinese symbol for crisis is the same as the one for opportunity. So, when things are all sort of shaken up and sort of loose, moving and changing, not stuck. They're far from stuck. They're just rapidly changing before our eyes. That's when we have an opportunity for real change. So that when the dust settles and this is, we're on the other side of a lot of this, that we can have a community, a society, and a world where human rights is paramount, where we are, about people and the planet, that, that communication and cooperation, truth and love, all the things that we need, that we go by principles and the spirit. That's, a lot of those things, I mean, they sound so abstract, but it's really about using those principles and that spirit to go after a world where another world is possible, to go after a different society with different values where, we've gone so far. And thank you about the capitalism, balance. We need balance. So what, is it to say that it should be, communist or there's the thing about authoritarianism in communism at times that isn't serving. So there's a way of putting people first, giving people freedom, giving people the opportunities, and not having having the corporations trampling all over people's rights and using, the power of the oligarchy to control and to oppress. So, I mean, oppression is not new. We've had it in different places, different times all over the world, here and all over the world. But it doesn't have to be that way. People power. I want to direct people to that, A Force More Powerful, that movie, A Force More Powerful. I know I'm like a broken record on that. But, it's very inspiring to see how people power can really get us where we need to go. And we need to be smart about it. And we need to be reaching out to everyone because, well, I didn't introduce myself, but I've started using, people can still call me Vicky. Most people do. And I like that. It's fine. But I like to use the word victory, my teenage nickname, because I like to say that the real victory, everybody wins. And that is what we're working on. We can get to a better place. This is not right when one person has as much as the bottom 52% of people. It's obviously ridiculous. It's a heinous, it's just like the Roman Empire and just crushing people. People are getting crushed with the regime that's going on now. So I do want to say this is nothing new. We've seen it. We've seen it in the Gilded Age. We see it. So the Bush years had their own, there's been, it's this struggle for people's human rights and what we need. Actually, I want to quote Cornel West, who said, if we have the moral integrity and the universal solidarity, we would get where we need to go. So I'm going to give, I think we have time to give, oh, no, we really don't. We don't have any more time. So, the time, I did say it would go fast, didn't I?
Yeah, you got about 2 more minutes if you want to take 2 more minutes.
We do have 2 more minutes.
Sure.
So, I just want to use those 2 more minutes to give you each another sentence. What's your bottom line of what you want people to remember from right now?
When it comes to human rights, I have this universalist idea that, seeing myself in everybody else and, not that you need to justify defending other people by seeing yourself in them, but anyone, who's dealing with anything in any condition in the world, it could just as well have been you. And we're all in this together. And in a very real way, we are all each other. And
Amen.
Need to.
Amen. I mean, Ashe. And Julia?
I would echo that. I would just want people to know that they're not alone.
Right.
Just to remember
Yes.
that there are ways to build solidarity,
Yes.
whether it's in your neighborhood, it's in your church, it's going to the Western New York Peace Center dinner on the 10th of November. there are opportunities for you to connect, and hopefully the people at this table are facilitating that kind of connection.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all trying to do here. So grateful to be doing it with you. I can't thank you both enough. Craig, I can't thank Craig enough. And I can't thank you enough, Greg. Without you, we don't have a radio show. Our faithful producer and engineer, WBNY. We're so grateful to WBNY. And I just want to say, this is Talking Peace. And together we've been talking peace in truth and love.